In there, 60. 55 is fine. 50 is not bad. You don't have real big or real wide. Hi, my name is Dan Sumerel, and this is the Less is More training video. This video is designed to help you better understand your horse and to change your behavior around your horse so you and your horse can work more as a team, taking some of the struggles out of the normal horse-human relationship. I teach a class called the Horse Course all over the United States and Australia that has been very effective in getting these concepts across. Most of the filming of the video you're about to see came from private individuals, ordinary folks just like you, working with this process with their horse at one of these horse course classes. In most training videos, what you see is some expert or hotshot showing off what they can do with a given horse. I have found that that is not always the best teacher, and the purpose of this video is to teach. So you're going to see the ordinary folks trying something new. They're going to make mistakes, and you're going to see them work through those mistakes. It is a much better way to learn by watching something done imperfectly, to see the mistakes that you're likely to make yourself and understand them and be able to recognize them and then be able to correct them as you go. In this video, you're going to see the Sumerel training system applied to 9 different horses with 9 different personalities. One of the tools that I've used in my horse course workshops has been the idea of having 6 or 8 different horses to work with to demonstrate the program. When someone works with a horse, you need to be adaptable in what you are doing. Fundamentals always work, and they always work with every horse. But how you apply those fundamentals is determined by the individual personality of each horse. We can't use a cookie cutter. It doesn't work that way with horses. So by seeing these different horses with their different personalities, there's going to be something in some of them that is going to be just like your horse, and that's going to help you when you go home to do this on your own. Each session that we show in this video has the person attempting to accomplish 3 goals. Number 1, primarily to get the horse to pay attention and to keep paying attention throughout the entire session. Number 2, to get the horse to develop a submissive attitude, to get respect from the horse, in other words. And number 3, and oh so important, to have the horse be comfortable in this process. You're going to see horses that are hot, horses that are calm, horses that are stoic, and all of the horses will gravitate to being more alike at the end of the process. In other words, they're all going to come out of the process attentive, respectful, and calm. In watching this video, which is several hours per tape, you will notice that at times it seems somewhat tedious. It is. The reason it's a bit tedious is because there is a lot of waiting involved in this process. The waiting on the horse, giving the horse time to think, time to evaluate what's going on, and to make his own decisions, is not something common in the horse world. We're all too much in a hurry, we're all too pushy, and we're all too busy watching the clock. We need to let go of that. So even though this is a bit tedious to watch at times, maybe you should watch this video in sessions. In other words, watch it for a half hour, an hour, and then go take a break. Then come back and watch some more. It is important that you see and digest everything in both videos. But it's a lot to sit there and watch something this tedious for a long period of time. It is also very important for you to be willing to wait when you go into the pen to work with your horse. And that is the point of watching how long these sessions take. In some cases, we have edited minutes of them out, and you will see the amount of time edited out of that session on the screen whenever we change a scene. But I really want you to understand that waiting for the horse, especially in the first few segments of time that you spend in the round pen with your horse, be willing to be patient and be willing to give that horse time to stop and think about what you're doing, to reevaluate it, and to make his own decisions. Far too often, all we do with horses is give them a cue and get a response, and give them another cue and get a response. And all that tends to do is make the horse reactive. Another word for reactive is spooky and nervous. I don't want horses to be reactive. I want horses to be calm and thoughtful. And you get there by giving them time to go through this process. You will also notice that in this round pen approach we use, it is very different from a conventional round pen. We are not looking for lap after lap after lap. We are not looking for fatigue. When the horse wants to go, we need to get the horse to stop. And we only want the horse to go just enough for us to be able to turn it and get him to respond to us as we ask for a reversal or a turn. We don't need lots and lots of laps. As you'll see in the first illustration, the horse only took a few minutes and did very few laps and very few turns. This process has worked on horses that were dangerous. This has worked on horses that were young. This process has worked on horses that were old. It doesn't matter what breed or what sex or what discipline the horse is active in. What we are doing in this video is fundamentals. It is the foundation of the horse-human relationship, and it's designed to give you a way to establish your place in the pecking order of your herd between you and your horse. One more quick point before you get through watching me standing around with Sonny and get on to watching this video is the fact that the video itself is not designed to be entertaining or all-inclusive. In other words, it is intended to go along with the book Finding the Magic, because there is so much in the book that will help you understand the whys of what we are doing in the pen with these horses. You need to read the book. You need to understand the whys. Simply watching a technique and going out to try it is often ineffective if the why isn't there for you to believe in the technique you're trying to do. It's very important for you to understand so many things about your horse that in today's horse world tend to be overlooked. So now let's get on to the video, and we're going to bring up our first horse. This cute young stud had developed enough unpleasant behaviors to be referred to as dangerous. Watch this segment and see what you think. He said, "Say what?" Now we have to accomplish three things. First, we have to get his attention. I think I did that one. And then I got to keep it. Then I've got to get him to go. He was pretty when he came in as a gray, but he's really not bad as a chestnut either, is he? Now I want you to watch his inside ear. Because if his inside ear stays on me, he's paying attention. If he looks away and takes both ears away, he's trying to avoid me. Now, do you all see that we just had a little bit of a test there? Did you all see that? Now, I want him to go the other way. This is my signal. This is my animation to back it up and get it to happen. Let's get him to go the other way. And then we stop. Now, I told him to go that way, so he can keep going that way, or he can stop, but he cannot reverse direct. He thought about it. There goes his mouth movement, which is important because when their mouth moves, they're thinking. If you do something and his mouth doesn't move, do it again because he didn't get it. And now we do what is the hardest thing for people to do, and that is wait. You want to see his head go down. You want to see his mouth move. He'll look around, checking out his options, trying to decide if it's okay to trust this weird guy with the bag. Now, do you notice the difference in his head position from when he approached me when I first walked in the pen to the way he approached me just then? About 2 feet of height or more. We have 3 goals in this process. 1, to get him to pay attention. 2, to get him to develop a submissive attitude. And 3, and most important, to get him to be comfortable. Now, if he tries to bump me or niggle, I will do that. I think he read the script. I'll say a few words to the folks. Now, if I don't define to him, yeah, that's noisy. If I don't define to him what is acceptable, how am I supposed to expect him to do what's right? Do you see that he yielded to my approach? You want his head to be down, you want his top line to level out. Now, if I move, he has several choices. He can leave, he can come with me, he could stay over there. Now, when he does come up to me, it's really, really important that you just do what I call get quiet. I don't say stand still, because a lot of times people stand still, but emotionally they're going ballistic inside. Get quiet means to relax, soften what you think, breathe. You know, oh yeah, breathe, I forgot about that one. Breathing's important. If you stop breathing long enough, you will fall over. That does not help the training or the horse. Now, he's a little curious. He says, why are you wearing 2 microphones? That's pretty dumb. Now, do you notice when he looked away, he kept his ear on me at first. Then he took his ear away. When he took his ear away, I moved. And I moved away from where he was looking, which drew his head back to me, like that. And I got one small step with a foot. But he's thinking about whether he's going to leave or come back to me. Okay? Now, in a conventional round pen approach, the correct thing to do would have been to send him off when he walked away. Do you see why I didn't send him off? He came back anyway. He says, if I had that, I could chase you around for a while. Now, if I move, where his attention goes is very important. Now, do you notice I lost both ears there for a second? I didn't react because I wanted you to see it, but the correct thing for me to do when he lost his ear would have been to pop the bag a little bit and get his ear back. Now, I did that just because he was crowding me a little bit, and I was just saying you need to back off a little. Now, that was because he bumped me with his shoulder. Now, if his head starts going up and he starts coming over me with his head, then he's testing me to see if I'm really an alpha. Now, another thing you can do if you want to test how he's thinking and how he feels is to move into his space. So that wasn't too bad for a short time we've been working because he got out of my way. If I had bumped into him and he didn't get out of my way, my dry cleaners comes back with these shirts with all these green slimes on them.
At least you got the mouth thing going.
Yeah. He has to learn that maybe that's about as close as he should be, okay? Now, when he turns to walk off, most brown pen people would tell you, send him off. Okay, there's a couple things about that. Number one, he may come back.
like he did before. If he did, that's good. But I'm going to tell you something that will probably surprise you, but I want you to think about it. If he doesn't do what I ask him to do, that is also good. And let me explain why. If I ask him to do something, or if he came over here and he bumped into me, what he is displaying, because he is loose, you see, there's no equipment contaminating what's going on here. He's free to make his own choices and display what he feels. See, he does what he really feels because he's loose. And if he does something that we would call inappropriate, or if he doesn't do what I want, he is showing us his true attitude. And his true attitude is what you are going to have to deal with. Are you back? So, I mean, if he walks up and kicks me out of the next county, that's not a good thing to have happen. But I want you to understand that if he doesn't do good things, like when he turned around and walked away there for a minute, well, we basically found the end of his attention span with me so far. Do you understand that? That's what we just found. Well, for as little as we've worked together, I think he did pretty good. So I don't want to beat him up because he's not perfect. I want to accept the fact that he's trying. He's being pretty good. And if he does something wrong or does something out of line, I'll correct it and we'll move on. Why should he respect and trust me? He doesn't know me from Adam. Why shouldn't he be a little concerned about, am I really worth following? Can I really trust this guy? Why shouldn't he have that type of attitude? He doesn't know me, does he? He's never seen me before tonight. So I tend to give the horse more freedom than most trainers. He says, I can eat microphones. Now, if he does anything aggressive like that, now you say, well, that was just a lip. Well, a lip comes first, then the gums together come along, and then you get the teeth eventually. Now, when he does something assertive like that, I use my little animated friend, but I kept going until he demonstrated a yield to me. And this is not yielding. That is flat resistance. This is yielding. So that's why I wiggle the bag and wiggle the bag and wiggle the bag, and he leaned his head way up and I wiggled the bag, and then he took a step back and turned away. He stepped back. When his feet move, he is yielded. When he does this or this, he's not yielding, he is resisting. When he does this and then steps back, that's when he actually yielded to you. And that's what you have to go for. Do you think he is really terrified of the plastic bag? No. He'd probably rather not have it in here. Horses like this can be so cute, and yet if you don't set guidelines for them, they can be absolute monsters. You ever heard the expression, you never get a second chance to make a first impression? He didn't have a clue who I was, did he? I have to define to him what's acceptable. And if he does something unacceptable, I have to let him know what was unacceptable. Now again, notice his top line. Notice where his head is. Does he look extremely stressed to you? He's not. He's not stressed at all. Now, he'll get bored, so rather than letting him get bored, what we're going to do is we're going to move again. We'll go for a little walk. Now, if he crowds me a little bit, I'll make sure he knows that that was not a good thing to do. Maybe we'll go back the other way. He says, okay, I think I'll wander off. I've had enough of this guy. So now let's go back to our original approach. well, maybe not. He says, maybe the best deal is over here. Now, do you understand the difference? If he came in with his head up high, that would be a totally different signal. Do you understand? If he were to nibble on my shirt or my arm now, he would be playing with me. Do you understand? It's a test. You can't tolerate it. You have to stop it. But he's playing with me. If he puts his head up and comes in with his ears pinned back, there goes the mouth. Oh, he says, wow, big sigh. Shake my head and relax. Wow, that was exciting. All these little nuances, shaking the head, lowering the head, all those things that people take for granted are not taken for granted. They are important to the horse. I'm trying to convince him that I'm a leader. So I have to act the part of a leader, but not with my rules, with his rules. Okay, let's go for another walk. Now that was a nice test. Did you all see that? It was important because I backed up. I didn't face him. I just moved and I wanted to see what he would do. And he politely got out of the way. That's what he would do if I were the alpha horse in the herd. Do you understand that? So would it be fair to give him a little bit of slack and say, you know, if he walks off and leaves me for a minute because he got bored and then comes back, maybe I don't need to run him around 25 laps because he ran away and left me. Maybe I just think, oh, it's this short attention span little horse. It's okay. He's a baby. Now, there's something else going on here that that is very, very important that most people don't get. When he's standing next to me, number one, how long have I been in the pen? 20 minutes? How much of the time that I have been in here has he been running around in circles? And how much of the time that I've been in here has he been standing next to me quiet? Do you get the point? Would you say that he ran around for about 3 minutes? Would anybody agree with that? And he's been standing around for probably 17 or 18 minutes? So would you realize most of the time he's been in here, what's he been doing? Standing quietly next to me. Now, standing quietly next to me, what does that do for him? What association does he now start to pick up? Well, number one, if he's going where I'm going, he's decided that I'm a pretty good deal. No, you can't chew the mic. Now, eventually, I would begin over the second and third session to very specifically establish that I want his head about like that. Because that's about as close as I want a horse when I'm working with him. I don't want him right in my lap. How does he know that? Well, he doesn't know that unless we establish it. How many times do you have to establish it? With a young stud like this, probably about 120. Now, he gave me a horsey response there. He said, no, I'll nibble on you. If he wanted to hurt me, do you understand I would have already been hurt? You all understand that? Okay. I'm back. Do you notice how he was when he walks up to me? You want the head down. Every time he shakes his head, sighs, and drops his head, that is a release. That is a change in his physiology. Consistency is the best thing that will work with him. What has he done that was really bad to me? Nothing. Nothing. Has he demonstrated some behaviors that I would like to correct? Yeah. Maybe his head's too close, maybe he's a little pushy. Okay. But he's really doing pretty good, I think. So if we decide, well, Dan's the big shot trainer, so Dan's got to make the horse look perfect tonight, so Dan better not let this horse do anything wrong. Do you understand we're going to destroy his will to try? Because every time he does something fairly good, but not perfect, and we beat him up, now do you see that right that he just did? That was very important. He took his head from this side of me to that side of me, but he went around me with his head. How many have ever been bumped into by the head of a moving horse? When a horse bumps into you with his head, he absolutely does not respect you. And you see all of the horses come out of the round pen paying attention, calmer and submissive. You're going to realize this does work. I have yet to find a horse this doesn't work on. Some it works faster, some it works slower, some take more ongoing work, some take less, but I've yet to find a horse it doesn't work on. I've done wild Mustangs, wild Brumby horses in Australia. I've done draft horses, horses that bite, horses that kick, horses that you name it. Giving the horse a chance to think, being consistent. We're going to teach you a process this weekend to organize your thoughts. Because you don't just say, okay, here's a bag, go in the round pen and chase the horse around. No, there's more structure got to be in place than that. It's got to be more of a plan than that. And if you're not organized in your thoughts, what the hell are you going to display for the horse? That is not going to get a horse to want to hang around with you. You want him to want to be with you. Because if he wants to be with you, that will demonstrate some respect. And if you build on that, you get to the point where the horse will do anything for you. Or try. If he tries, and you reward the try, he'll try again. I'll stick around and answer some questions for a little while, and I hope that was worth your time. Thanks for coming, folks.
In each of these segments, note the relationship of the person and the horse as the person brings the horse in. Is the horse following softly and lightly? Is the horse paying attention? Is the horse trying to get away? It all matters, so pay attention to every detail. Now the first thing I have to do, or you have to do when you start with a horse, is to use the bag like that to get and keep the horse's attention. Usually 1 or 2 movements of the bag is enough. If not, do more. In most cases, a slight movement is enough, so never do more with the bag than you need. Now, as I've sent the horse off, you would always send the horse off the opposite way he's facing. And then, as you see in the small picture, change the wand and bag behind your back every time you want to reverse the horse's direction. Do a lap or 2 one direction, and then change your body position in relation to the horse. In other words, get in front of the horse with your body, and use the wand, waving the bag, as well as pointing with your hand to give the horse the signal of which direction to go. Do not allow the horse to reverse on his own. He must go the way that you said. We do a few laps with the horse. I stop and get quiet. You see the horse's mouth moving. You see the horse's ears going, her looking around. She's thinking about what's happening. Do I trust this young man? She doesn't know me, so I have to earn her trust. I stop and get quiet, which means stop moving, don't wave the bag, and try to think about yourself to emotionally get quiet and just wait. You want to see the horse's head drop, her mouth moving, and you want to see her walk up towards you. The horse may walk right on in, or the horse may stay there like this for a while, thinking and evaluating what's going on, looking around to judge her options. Be patient. You want to see her mouth move. You want to see her head drop, and then you'll see her move in, like that. Now she came in a little ways and then stopped again. She came in as far as she was comfortable. That's as far as they'll ever come. You want to just wait. Remember, this is the first test of this approach with a horse. All the videos you're going to see are a horse going through this for the first time. We're going to go slow, we're going to be patient with the horse, and we'll try to define each and every step so you know what's going on. Notice how much she looks around. You can always tell she's thinking. Many people have trouble being this quiet with a horse for long periods of time. By the time you've sat through these 2 videos, you will understand how important quiet time with a horse can be. You want to leave her alone. You ask her to go, you asked her to give you control of her, and you took control, and she responded. Now you have to let her think and figure it out for herself. There goes the head down again. Every time she puts the head down, she's thinking about coming in. Waiting is a difficult thing for people to do with animals. But you need to learn to wait. You need to learn and develop your patience when working with a horse. By being patient, you're going to create a horse that is less reactive and more thoughtful. A reactive horse is a horse that spooks. A thoughtful horse is the horse that won't get you in trouble. Now, while you're focused on the horse, you're asking the horse to be focused on you. If you don't pay attention to them, there is no reason they should pay attention to you. It has to go both ways. Now, if I lose the ear or her attention, I'd pop the bag like you just saw a second ago. That little step was another try. You see how long it took to get that extra step. Notice that her front feet stopped, kind of spread out. She stopped in mid-step, which means she stopped in mid-thought. She needs to do that, and she'll probably keep on going. Each step is important to her because it closes the proximity to the handler. She doesn't want to be next to someone she doesn't trust. She's never seen me before, so I have to earn that trust. She doesn't mind the human being in control, but she wants you to be trustworthy, predictable, and fair and consistent. Waiting and watching. And also I would mention, the time you spend standing quietly watching your horse, the more observing you do, the more things you will see going on in the horse. The end result will be the horse calmly putting her head down and deciding she wants to be with you and walking in when it's right for her. You didn't force it, you let it happen. Notice her head went down several times before her feet began to move, and she ends up standing quietly. And standing quietly is what you want to do now. When she comes in, avoid the tendency to grab her, rub her, pet her, do anything. Just stand quiet. Here we stood for 1.5 minutes before we do anything else with the horse. What do we do next? Let's move. Moving tests our connection with the horse. I moved into the horse a step or so, asked her to yield to me and to go with me, and she did. Then I waited, let her think about that, and I repeated it, moved into her again. Again, she yielded rather softly. You want the horse to yield when you approach. You will also need to move away from the horse. In other words, drawing the horse to you instead of putting pressure on her to go away from you. That is a bit harder, but it is important for you to test that aspect of the horse's responsiveness to you as well. You will move into her. You will also move away from her. Sometimes the horse will yield one way and not the other. Those are things you will evaluate, and whatever the horse does not do well is what you will need to work on and repeat. Again, after another pause, this time 3 minutes, we move again. Each time you stop and wait for 2 or 3 minutes, you're giving a horse the chance to relax, calm down. You are also establishing a positive association. In other words, the horse thinks of you, and thinks of standing, comfortable, and quiet. Now moving straight into the horse, as I'm doing here, is another way to test the horse's resistance or non-resistance to your approach. The horse should yield and back up softly. If you start going forward into the horse's bubble and the horse isn't backing up, don't bang into the horse. Start to wiggle the bag and make some animation behind you and get the horse to yield as I am doing here. See the bag moving? The horse is kind of stuck and I keep using the bag until I get a foot to move. Now I want the other foot to move. And then of course you wait. Every time you do something, you must pause or wait after you did it to let the horse think about and digest what just occurred. Too often I see people do something, then they do something else, and they do something else, and they do something else, and the poor horse is still figuring out what was going on 3 steps back. Then the people get upset and wonder why the horse is nervous, excited, confused, and sometimes gets a really nasty attitude. Now you may want to send the horse off, and you may actually be in this position when you want to send him off. What many people would do is get very confused, and they dance around the horse not knowing, where do I go, what do I do? You should be able to send the horse off from wherever you happen to be standing. You would simply turn and face the horse, decide where you want him to go, point, use the bag. Now he's going towards the fence, so he's going to start off in a good direction, and you got the horse to go without wandering all over the place. There's an old saying in the horse world, he who moves his feet the most is not in control. So when you want to send the horse off, you don't want to run over here to send him off or run over there. You want to be able to send the horse off from wherever you happen to be. So if I walked over here, let's say my position was different, and I end up next to the fence, and I want to send the horse off. How would I do that? First, I decide where I want the horse to go. Then I would change my body position to get where I want to be, facing the horse, put the bag out, point, and send the horse off, using as little bag movement as necessary. But remember, whoever's running around, moving their feet and dancing around most is not in control. You want to be still as much as you can. Now also, while you're going through every one of these steps, always be watching the horse. What did the horse do when we sent her off? She went off nicely. And then when I stopped sending, what did she do? She stopped, she turned, and she faced me. That's a sign of respect. Now let's ask her to go off one more time. Point, using the bag. She has a good attitude, so it's not taking a lot of waving of the bag. Some horses, you're going to need to wave the bag like a crazy person. Some horses, if you barely put it out, it will go. I reverse the horse there by getting in front of her with my body position, changing hands behind my back, change my hands behind my back again, and you see the difference there. The horse goes the other way. Reverse her again. You do not need to do lap after lap after lap. Reversing the horse is more powerful than running dozens of laps. The laps don't matter. Again, when you stop, get quiet and watch the horse. Let her decide what she's going to do. By asking her to go and turn a few times, she's now decided she's going to stay over there. She may not want to join my herd if she's going to have to work. That's okay. This is also a good place to remind you to pay attention where you have the bag. On some horses, it's a big deal whether you put the bag out to the side or in the front. This particular horse is not too bothered by the bag, but you need to pay attention to that because some horses, moving the bag 2 inches will cause the horse to jump. So you have to use the bag in a fashion that is appropriate for that particular horse and pay close attention to that as you handle the horse. Now she's stuck and staying over there, so let's approach her, and by approaching we are putting pressure on her bubble, and let's see if we can get her to free up the movement of her feet and come back and join up with us again. I walked up to about 10 feet from her and I stop to see what she will do. When I got up to her, her head dropped, she's still looking around. but she isn't coming in. And we want to get her to come into us. Just being there is putting pressure on her bubble, and you need to pay attention as you approach the horse that you don't walk up, go past the bubble, run into the bubble, and run the horse off. I stopped before she left, and that's very important. Sometimes the horses have a very defined bubble, and as you approach, one more step is going to send the horse running. That's one more step that you shouldn't have taken. So pay close attention to that. Also remember to stay focused on where the horse's attention is throughout this entire process. If she is not paying attention to you, you use the bag and get her attention back. That must be a constant effort throughout the entire time you're with the horse. Now, let's move to the side and see if changing our position, in other words, where the pressure on the bubble comes from, can get the horse to turn and face us. And that worked pretty well, didn't it? Now, each time you move and the horse goes with you, that tells you the horse is getting more connected with you. If you move and the horse does not choose to go with you, that tells you that you need to do more work, especially on that side of the horse, perhaps. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just an excellent way of defining how connected the horse has become with you at that point. Now, another tool that we use, I used over there, we'll try it again. Now, after a brief pause, let's try to walk through her head again, as we did before. This time we are on the other side of the horse, so we'll see if the response is any different. That wasn't bad, but I did have to actually touch her with my hand. And we'd rather get to the point where you simply walk into her space and she yields softly away without any physical contact. Pay close attention to the horse as you approach, and if it looks like you're going to actually run into her and she's not moving, then you could begin to use the bag behind you to encourage her to move before you actually had physical contact occur, or to minimize how much pressure you put on her when you touched her. Another thing to pay attention to when you're working with the horse loose like this is the movement of her feet. If I walk into her space and she does not move her feet, she simply turns her head away, that is resistance. If she actually turned and walked off, that would not be good, and at that point you would probably want to send her off. If at any point the horse turned its back end towards you, you could bring the bag around like that to move the back end away from you. Now, after I use the bag to move her back end away and send her off, she walks away and stays there. She looks back. Are you still back there? Yeah, we're still here. But she doesn't turn and come in. What that's telling us is that she is not connected enough yet. We still need to do more work. She's not bad. She's not mean. She's just a little bit independent, and we can work with that. In order to address her independence, we might send her off again like this. Send her around, and then reverse her, and then reverse her again. You don't need to do 20 laps between each reversal. Remember, the reversals, the changing of direction, where you are asserting your control of her is more important than doing lots and lots of laps. Then stop and get quiet and see what she does. Watch her put her head down. Watch her think about coming in. That's actually a try. That's a good thing. She puts her head down again. Notice that now her mouth starts to go again. She's looking around, she's dropped her head a couple of times, her mouth is working, so she is thinking. As long as the horse is thinking, we might stay here a little bit longer. If the horse was doing nothing, if the head was still, if the mouth wasn't moving, if the horse was totally stoic, then it might be time to send her off again or move on to something else. Many people would see this horse not come dashing in and be oblivious to all the things that are going on. Her ears moving, her tail's moving, her head's going up and down, she's looking around. And all those symptoms tell us that this horse is still thinking. So it would be reasonable to wait and give this horse more time to make a decision rather than just rushing into something else. Later on in further sessions, we might be faster to move, but she would also be more connected with us and make that easy to do. Now, even with the mouth movement, we're not getting her to come in. So maybe we need to try a little more of an approach on our part, and let's walk up to the horse, maybe about a third or half of the way there. The last time we were in this position, I moved to my right, and that got her to turn and face me and was a good step. Let's try going to my left this time, the other side, and see how she responds to that action on my part. Now last time I went around that way and she turned and came with me. Let me go this way this time and see how she does this side. She started to move, can you all see that? But then she kind of got stuck. So we let her think about it for about a minute or so, and then we move a little farther and see what happens now. That was actually better than the first time because she actually came up to me more assertively. That was good. Now this time when I walked past her, do you notice that she was a bit distracted by something? She didn't think I was important enough to turn with me. So once I got to where I was going, I used the bag a little bit to remind her to pay attention to me. The same thing we've been doing since we started. Make her pay attention. And when I did that, she turned more to my side. Now let's test how well she's really doing and actually walk off. I go a few feet and then I stop. And what does she do? She stops nicely beside me. That's what we're after. After a brief pause, walk off again, maybe in a different direction. Once we go a few feet, we may even stop, and now I'm going to try and back up. And if I back up, let's see if she'll follow me that way. Once the horse starts to connect with you, you can move in different directions, different ways, and different speeds to test how connected you really are. If you move and the horse didn't follow, that's okay. This little girl's doing very, very well. Once you get to where the horse moves and is very connected with you, you can then get the horse to stand quietly still for long periods of time. In this case, I talked for 17 minutes to the crowd about various different topics while the horse stood nicely beside me. That is something many people would very much envy. Now, as I begin to move into the horse and she turns softly with me, very connected, looks very nice, but usually about this time someone will ask a question about the problem that this presents. The problem being, if every time you move and everywhere you go the horse turns his head to you, which is what you want, how do you work on the back end of the horse? How do you get around to the back end of the horse unless it's tied up to work with its back feet or even to put a saddle on? And the answer is very simple. You put your hands on the horse. Notice I put my hands on the horse and I begin to move around the horse, touching her all the time. Her feet don't move and her head doesn't follow me because I am touching her. As soon as I finish brushing her back end or doing whatever I had to do in the back end, I simply step back away from the horse, and the lack of contact should bring her head back towards me as it does here. I wish I could say I invented this, but unfortunately that's not true. It's just one of those more miraculous things that's there in a horse automatically. Now watch one more time. As the horse is facing me, I walk past her, put my hands on her body, touch her, go all the way around the back end of the horse, and then when I let go of her, once again she turns and faces me out of respect. Since I prefer to saddle my horses untied, matter of fact I do almost everything with my horses untied, I would simply walk up to the horse with the saddle in one hand, touch her on the shoulder like this, sit the saddle on, lean down, get my girth taken care of, and the horse is very comfortable and I have a good time about it. As you watch me end up with this horse after the first session in the round pen, I want to point out a couple of things. Many people have had a horse for years that are not as connected as I have become with this horse in about an hour. Many people would envy the way this horse looks. Soft, relaxed, yet very attentive. When I move, she moves. All of those are very, very positive steps, and that's what you can accomplish with this type of work. After seeing what one small session can do with a horse and a person about getting connected with each other, think how connected you can become with a horse after 2 or 3 weeks of several sessions per week with this type of an approach. Also notice that even though we've been working with this horse for about an hour, this horse is not stressed. This horse is very relaxed, very comfortable, and yet very respectful and very attentive. Those things need to go together more in the horse world. Now it's time for me to step out and bring the owner in and let her attempt the same approach with her horse. And she has never done this before, So you have to bear with her and understand she's going to make mistakes, many of the same mistakes that you and I make when we start. Now the owner starts out a little indecisive here. You can notice she kind of sends the horse off, doesn't do too bad in the initial send off, but then she immediately drops the wand and bag behind her and changes the direction without changing her body position, and the horse begins to ignore her right off the bat. She is trying to get the horse to go to her right, and yet her body position is so out of place, in other words, she is far too far in front of the horse with her body, that the horse immediately turns back towards the lady's left. The lady, instead of reinforcing that the horse needs to go to the right, she allows the horse to reverse, and she changes the wand and bag behind her, following the horse. I had to intervene to get her back on track and get the horse going back the right direction. Notice how when she does try to reverse the horse just stands there and looks at her. And she's using the bag, but not enough, allowing the horse to ignore her. She is not using the bag enough to get the horse to yield and go off, but she's also cutting across straight in front of the horse, so her body position is telling the horse to do the opposite of what the bag in her hand position is saying. When I ask the lady to reverse the horse, she doesn't do it in a very quick, defined fashion. The horse tests her by speeding up. She ends up being behind the horse, and as you see here, the horse gets past her and actually gets away. The horse tested her, and she failed the test. Not very alpha-like on her part. Again, the horse stops. The lady begins to send the horse off. The horse simply looks at her and says, "No, I don't think so." She must use more bag to get the horse going. And as soon as she gets the horse going, she gets her body position in front of the horse again, another mistake, which tends to turn the horse back again. The next time she had to reverse the horse, I coached her into being much further in front of the horse, planning ahead, thinking about what she was going to do. The horse again started to speed up and test her, but the lady was far enough in front, got her body position correct, used the bag as she should, and successfully reversed the horse. Anytime you successfully overcome a challenge from the horse, that is a good time to stop and get quiet. And the horse responds by turning, starting to walk in, and moving her mouth. Her head's still a bit high, but she was thinking because she moved her mouth, and she did turn in and head towards the owner. I'm sure you could all tell watching this lady and her horse that the demeanor of the horse, the assertiveness of the horse towards her, was much greater than it had been with me. The horse didn't know me from Adam, but the horse had a lot of experience with this woman, and this lady had not been alpha to this horse, and the horse knew that. Now we see the head drop and the horse head in even further. When she loses the horse's attention for an instant, she pops the bag to get the horse's attention back on her, as she should do. For this lady to be successful with her horse, she is going to have to earn the horse's respect. In most cases, yes. In this situation, the horse doesn't really care, so it's not a problem. As soon as you lose that inside ear, pop the bag and get her back. Horses will follow you if you earn the right. After a brief pause, she's going to send the horse off again, and I want you to watch when she sends the horse off and then tries to reverse the horse. She will immediately get way in front of the horse, and you'll see her body position is too far in front. The horse immediately begins to turn, and I have to correct her to get her body position back where it should be to have the horse going off towards the right. Then almost immediately the horse will try to stop testing her, and she has to use the bag to get the horse going again. As she circles the horse, I'm trying to get her to change her body position and be more behind the horse to drive it forward. Do not let yourself get in front of that shoulder. Did you all see her getting out of place there? That's why the horse turned, not because the horse was being defiant. Okay, behind your back, get way in front, cut her off in the other direction, send her off. Way in front, way in front. Now stay behind her. She then accomplishes a successful reversal of the horse, and I ask her to get quiet, and let's see what happens next. An important point for you to notice with this lady working this horse is not exceptionally bothered or reactive to the bag, so using the bag a lot is not an issue with this horse. You need to use the bag on your horse as much as needed, but as little as possible. And in many cases, horses are far more reactive to the bag than this horse, as you'll see in later demonstrations. So in that case, using the bag too much would be a problem. You need to use it as much as necessary, but always, always as little as possible. Since the horse didn't come in, I asked the lady to approach the horse, walking about halfway to where the horse was. This increases the pressure on the bubble, but does not cause the horse to leave. Notice that during this time, the horse isn't changing and the horse isn't giving in, but you're also not seeing the horse's mouth move. The horse's head is still somewhat high, and those are things that you need to pay attention to. We need to see the mouth move, we need to see the head drop before this horse is going to change her attitude towards this person. By giving the horse time to think, the horse eventually walks in to where we want the horse to be, next to the person. And think about this. In a conventional round pen approach, when the horse stopped out on the fence and didn't come in, they would have sent the horse off again to do more laps. And they would have missed the opportunity to get this, and they would have gotten the horse more lathered, they would have gotten the horse stressed, and it would have been unnecessary. I've seen horses like this run for 15 or 20 or 30 almost solid minutes being chased by someone in the round pen, and it was absolutely unnecessary. It's also counterproductive, because all the time that horse is running around and around and around trying to get away from you, that is establishing an association of exactly the opposite attitude that I want in the horse. I want the horse to look like this. I want the horse to want to be with you. I want the horse to have its head down, be relaxed, not be lathered, paying attention, and submissive. A lot of requirements, but very easily achieved with a proper approach to the horse. In a conventional round pen approach, it is very common for a 30 or 45-minute session to be made up of mostly the horse running away from the handler, the opposite of what we're after. Now the owner decides she's going to back away from the horse to see if she can draw the horse towards her. And the horse's initial response is to take a small step and turn to face her, an excellent choice. But the horse doesn't come right in yet. What you do see is the horse very attentive towards the lady, and you see her mouth moving. Then you notice the head drop, a couple of times actually, and the horse take several steps towards the owner. She's going in the right direction. And after a brief pause, the horse takes another step towards the owner. Notice that all this time the owner is simply standing still. You've got to understand the positive, powerful approach that standing still offers for you with a horse. Again, after a brief pause, the owner moves away from the horse again. This time it doesn't take nearly as long, and the horse comes up closer yet. We're going in the right direction here. But it's important for you to remember the importance of the pause or the waiting between each action. Don't move and then move again and move again and move again. Move, wait and see what happens. While you're waiting, use that time to evaluate what the horse is doing. And again, after a brief pause, the owner starts to move, this time in the opposite direction away from the horse, and almost immediately the horse follows her off. Now, she does tend to keep going. I think she was so excited that the horse was following her that she was going to walk on the way to Cleveland. But really, when you move and the horse follows you, if he'll follow you a few steps, just go that far and stop and let him enjoy that. Don't try and go too far, too fast. As you watch the owner move and the horse respond to those movements, you can see the horse is respectful and attentive, but not too sure what's going on. Partially because the owner is a bit vague in how she is moving. Think about what you want to do before you do it around a horse, and then do one specific defined task. If you're going to walk, walk in one direction, slowly and defined. The horse will understand it and the horse will respond appropriately. If you meander around vaguely, it will confuse and frustrate the horse. You can see a very willing attitude in this horse. Head down, soft and responsive. She just needs direction. Next, I direct the owner to walk right through the horse's head towards the fence. If you're an alpha, you don't walk around other horses. You go wherever it is you plan to go, and the horses have to get out of your way. Notice as the lady walks through how softly and responsively the horse yields her position. You should also notice how relaxed the horse was and that her head never went up when she was asked to yield by the approach. When the owner goes to pick up her lead line, I ask her to walk right through the horse. Not hooking on the rope, just walk right through the horse, as she had done before. She kind of vaguely meandered around, and it didn't look real good. I then had her stop, turn and face the horse, and now with planning, walk right through the horse in the opposite direction. And this time, the result was quite different. She then backs up 2 or 3 steps, and the horse turns and comes towards her that way as well. Nice, soft, and respectful. Now it's time to change the game somewhat and put a lead line in the situation. I have the lady walk up to the horse and hook on the lead line. But unlike what most people do, we do not grab the buckle, we do not grab the halter, and we do not grab the lead line close to the horse. We put lots and lots of slack, 3 or 4 feet between the lady and the horse, to give the horse a bit of freedom. The same way we gave the horse a bit of freedom when we turned it loose in the round pen to begin with. We have the lady walk off and the horse follows. Notice we don't pull the rope because the horse has been following the person already without the rope. Now when you add the rope, nothing should change. You will notice as I have the owner walk off leading the horse, she tends to stick her arm out to the side and look rather abnormal at first. This is a common thing to happen. So I ask her to put the rope down to her side and just walk this way, turn, walk that way, turn, and see what the horse does in response. And this horse looks very nice. Now, interestingly enough, at one point when she's beside the horse's head, I ask her to turn and walk right through the horse. She started to go around, she started to stop, she wasn't sure, and the horse didn't yield. Yet when she did walk right through the horse with intent and with focus, the horse politely got out of her way. Another example of being vague around a horse, creating a vague response, being specific around a horse, creating a specific response. Another important test of evaluation when you're working with a horse this way or at liberty is when you stop. So if you walk one way and she follows, you walk this way and she follows, then of course you need to stop. And when you stop, she should stop very shortly as well. If you rewind this segment and watch the last few minutes over, you will notice the owner does something and meanders into something else and meanders into something else. So at this point I coach the owner to separate things, to do one thing, go one direction or make one turn, and then stop. See what happens, and not connect everything up just yet. That's important for you as well. Another good exercise is to move around the horse. In other words, do a full circle. Get the horse to turn entirely around. Don't do this the first action. Do this after the horse turns to the left, turns to the right, walks off, backs up, and then start to ask the horse for more involved movement, such as a complete circle. Also, as you watch this lady and the horse, notice when she first moves around the horse, she's very vague, horse isn't responding good. She then starts to move defined to do what I ask her to do. Move, go ahead and do it. And the horse responds beautifully. Okay, stop. Now turn around and go right through her head and come over here. Good. And stop. Now, one thing you can do as a tool, when you start to get near the horse's head like that, put your hand up in front of her face. That's just there to protect you from getting bumped into. You're not going to smack the horse. If you need to, you can push the head away. Okay? Well, I am here for that. Okay, we can bring her out. Old habits die hard. Notice as the lady walks out with the horse, she's already taken up half the slack in the rope, but the horse is still following real nice. I'd also like to point out that when you notice the time on this session, that this horse was in the round pen for almost 2 solid hours. Many people would think a 2-hour training session with a horse was insane. Yet notice when the horse came out, how nice, soft, and how free of stress the horse was from an appropriate training session. This horse is much bolder, much more indifferent, almost a bit aloof, And as we watch this horse go, you will see that the owner has got her procedures down pretty well. Her body positions pretty well. She's using the bag and changing direction rather efficiently. And overall, she's doing a pretty good job of doing what she needs to control the horse. You should notice that as the horse is going around and around, his head is still turned a bit outward. In other words, he is looking for a way out. He's not looking to give in. He is looking for a way out of this predicament and being controlled by this human being. Also, when you see her stop and get quiet, watch what the horse does. Because when she stops, he actually speeds up. And then he goes back into a nice moving pace, but he continues to go and go and go. This is a type of horse that many of you are going to run into where the horse does not stop. The horse wants to avoid you or get away from the control, and therefore the horse keeps going and going and going, attempting to avoid giving in. In this situation, it's important for you to understand what keeps the horse going, and that is the pressure on his bubble. He is feeling the pressure of an alpha asking him to give in and join the herd, and he is resisting that pressure, and it is the pressure that keeps the horse going and going and going. If you had a horse like this in a small round pen, the pressure would be great and it would not be a good situation. Since the pressure on the horse is what's keeping him going, and we want him to stop, one way to change the pressure the horse is feeling would be to back up and become off-center in the round pen. As you begin to back up and get off-center in the pen, the horse will feel greater pressure going behind you where you're getting closer and closer to the rail, and will feel less pressure on the opposite side as you begin to get farther and farther from the distant rail. Watch as the horse comes around the right side of the screen out from behind the girl. The girl takes a step backwards. That single step affected the horse enough that he tried to turn in almost immediately. Yet, he turned in too fast and ran into his own bubble and caused him to bounce off his own bubble and go back to the right. If you didn't get that, rewind the tape and watch this again so you see what happened. Ordinarily, we would have sent the horse back in the clockwise direction he was originally going, but in this situation, when he tried to turn in other words, tried to do what we wanted, he actually ran into his own bubble, and the pressure of that bubble is what got him to go off to the right in the wrong direction, so we didn't discipline the horse. This is a judgment call that many of you will have trouble with at first, but after you've worked with a lot of horses, it will become more apparent to you. It would not have been wrong had she sent the horse back off in the clockwise direction he was originally going. Once the horse gets going, he immediately goes back into his old pattern of behavior of go, 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 go to avoid the person. So at this point, I'm going to teach her another technique, which is moving sideways to herd the horse to a stop. In other words, asserting control over the horse while he's loose from a distance, but rather than use the bag, simply using your body position and moving side to side. The key here is to go sideways, the direction the horse is going, quickly. And then when the horse stops, for you to immediately go in the other direction quickly and stop him from going in that direction. Usually what happens is you go back and forth 3 or 4 or 5 times, but at each time the horse moves, he moves less distance in each direction. If you move quickly and precisely, preferably quicker than he is, and that's sometimes very hard to do, you will get the horse to stop, as this lady succeeds to do right now. This is a very powerful technique because it allows a person to control a horse from a distance when they are loose, and it makes a very strong impression on the mind of the horse as to the power and control of the person. If you can master this technique, it will help you immensely when you go out to try and catch a horse in a large area that does not want to be caught. It will require you to read their body language, because when they start to turn the other way, that's when you need to be going the other way. And when they start to reverse back again, that's when you need to be going that way. If you are behind their action, if you're moving too slow or too late, they will take charge. So it does require quick feet movement on your part. There the horse gets a bit distracted. Something over the side gets his attention, takes it away from the handler, and the handler has to pop the bag to get the attention back. Somewhat aggressively use the bag, unlike the horse in the previous segment. But you must stay focused on the horse, and you must keep their attention. After about 5 minutes of waiting and moving around, the owner decides to approach the horse. And whenever you approach a horse for the first time, always stop just out of reach if you're able to get that close. If the horse had a big bubble, you wouldn't have gotten that close. You would have done it in incremental steps. Forward a little bit, watch for the bubble, wait, and so on. But in this case, she was able to get up pretty close to the horse right off the bat. For quite a while, this person and this horse seem to be at a stalemate. They are actually having a bit of a battle of wills. Every time the horse looks away, the person has got to get that attention back. And by being persistent, even though it seems like nothing but a standoff, this person is making very big points with this horse. One other technique that I like to use with students, especially with stoic horses, or if things are a bit tedious or going difficult, then I will have the owner just turn and walk away from the horse, as this person is doing now. And much to the surprise of the crowd and the person, the horse turned and went in that direction as well. Since I had told the person to just forget about the horse and walk off, taking all the pressure off of the animal, very shortly the horse realized that there was no command to follow, no intent to follow, and so the horse just stopped. That's okay, but it's important that he did turn to her and begin to go with her when she left. After a brief pause, I have her walk back up to the horse and approach him again, stopping just out of his reach. And then something distracts him, and notice how much effort she has to expend to get that horse's attention back. You must get and keep their attention. It doesn't matter what you do, but you've got to keep their attention. If the bag's not enough, then add something else, an animation or movement to the bag. Since this horse seemed to be a bit stuck, I had the person approach the horse even a little closer than before. Once she was right beside the horse's head, I actually had her walk through the horse's head, turning him away, and then she walked on towards the gate with the horse following along. As she walked through him, he had to yield to her approach. And notice that when she stopped shortly after, how much his mouth was working to indicate that he was thinking. Again, I had her turn into the horse's head and walk right through him, getting him to move his feet and go along with the direction she wanted him to go. After a couple of more similar movements over the next 3 minutes, she ended up facing the opposite way the horse was. Then I had her simply walk off, and the horse turned and followed her. A very good sign that we're making progress with this horse. It is also important to notice that when she stopped, he stopped too. As she walked around with the horse followed quite well, but had a tendency to walk past her when she stopped. If you think about it, if you stop and the horse kept going for a couple of extra steps, the horse wasn't paying close enough attention to you. As she stops and the horse keeps going, we have her simply pop the bag in front of the horse to say, "Pay attention to me, horse." And he does, and he backs up. The use of the bag got the desired response by stopping and backing the horse, showing the horse where we wanted him to be. It disciplined the horse for an inappropriate action. In other words, he went too far forward, and we told him that. He felt no pain from the discipline. And it would be very good to point out now that discipline, horses, children, or whatever, is a mental step. It is not about how much pain you can inflict, because discipline's goal is to change a pattern of behavior. And that is a mental step. So ideally, discipline should change a mental attitude or pattern of behavior. And the animation that we used on this horse did change his attitude. And he felt no pain, and that was a positive step to achieve. Anytime you can discipline a horse without making physical contact or initiating pain, you have done a better job than if you simply haul off and whack the horse every time something goes wrong. Animation or movement is a very powerful tool for disciplining an animal like this. Again, she disciplined the horse and defined to him what she wanted, but she didn't hurt him. It is also important for you to notice how comfortable and willing this horse is to happily stand quietly next to her for extended periods of time. You want to get a horse that can stand still and be calm? You need to let him know that's okay. He needs to learn to stand like he learns everything else.
Now, where this horse is in relationship to her, in my opinion, is pretty good. If he were half a step further forward, I wouldn't mind. If he was a couple inches closer, I wouldn't mind. Now walk that way.
Once again, she turns and walks off the opposite way the horse is facing, and he follows her quite nicely. But notice the difference when she stops this time. He stops very well. Did the discipline with the bag work before? Yes, it did. He understood what she was told, and it worked. He's starting to figure out what she wants. And she helps him figure that out by being very defined in what she accepts or does not accept from him. When you see the film peel off and say 5 minutes later, you need to understand why I would have someone stand still with their horse for 5 or 6 minutes. Number one, the horse is standing still. Notice the top line of the horse is calm and quiet. The horse is very relaxed about this. When the owner turns to walk towards the gate of the round pen and get her halter, she basically just walked off away from the horse and left him. And he still chose to follow her. Had she turned and walked off a little slower, a little more softly, and wanted the horse to come, he would have been right with her the whole way. Once the halter was on, I had the young lady walk around a couple of times and then stop and spend the last few minutes just standing quietly with the horse. Again, reinforcing to you, I hope, that the time you spend simply quietly with your horse, as long as the horse is paying attention, is very, very powerful things to do. You need to spend time with the horse being still. Here's a lady who loves her horse dearly and is not really quite sure how to get the horse to behave. We're going to start her off by sending off the horse the same way we did with the rest of the horses, and I want you to pay very close attention to her body position in relationship to the horse. She is going to display the same tendency we've talked about before, and that is to get in front of the horse and cut the horse off. Watch her where she goes when she sends the horse off. You'll be able to see it very specifically because she'll actually come towards the camera here in a moment, and you need to see the horse is going around, and look where she's going. She is actually coming across, cutting the horse off, and her body position stopped him. The horse is very perceptive, the horse is very attentive, and she stopped the horse by her body language. As she reverses the horse, she does get quite a ways in front of the horse, as I'm coaching her to do. But again, she tends to get too far in front as the horse goes off, which is contradictory to what her hand and her bag is telling the horse. There, you actually see her stop the horse with her body language. This horse is very attentive, and it's really important with a horse like this that you be precise in what you do. This horse is also displaying a resistance by not wanting to go. When she is in the right position, she's using the bag to get the horse to go. Notice the horse tried to stop a couple of times. He's tending to slow down. So she actually has to use the bag more to get the horse going. You cannot allow the horse to get away with resisting you by stopping if you are asking the horse to go. If you say go, he has to go. If you say go left, he has to go to the left. That's the way it works. Alphas don't tolerate any less, and you're going to become an alpha. Notice when she got quiet that the horse stopped, almost facing away from her, almost showing her his butt. This is not a sign of respect. He does turn to look at her briefly, and that's okay. If that's all he can do, that was what we will accept. Note that even though the horse's head is so close to the camera, you cannot see the horse's eye or ear. Every time the horse takes its attention away from her, she is using the bag to insist that the horse pay attention. After standing still for a few minutes, I have her approach the horse. But at that point, the horse turns and attempts to avoid her by going off in the opposite direction he was facing. So I have her move quickly to the side and turn the horse back in the direction he was facing, sending him off the way he had been pointed before. When the horse tried to go the opposite way she had told him to go, she had to go after the horse with the bag and get him going back in the correct direction. Now at that point, she stops and goes back to the middle. You don't need to change the horse around for 20 minutes just because he tried to go the wrong way. If you simply reverse him in the correct direction, you can then stop and get quiet. As she approaches him this time, she gets about halfway towards him, and he actually does turn towards her and take a step in her direction, but he's still kind of stuck. Notice after he takes that first step and is leaning towards her, his left front foot looks like it's glued to the concrete. Finally, after minutes and minutes of approach and retreat, which is pressure on and pressure off the horse's bubble, trying to induce the horse to move, the horse finally looks ahead and moves off. And since he went off the same direction he was facing, she doesn't send him away, she simply lets him go. If the horse tries to reverse and go the other way, she will have to reverse him back to the direction she last told him to go. After several more minutes of being stuck, as she approaches the horse, he decides to turn and try to go the other way, testing her or trying to avoid the situation.
Now if he turns to go the other way, do the exact same thing again. This is about control. That's all it's about. If you can control him while he's loose, you'll become his alpha and he will begin to respect you. If you can't control him when he's loose, then he will only give you when you've got enough equipment in your hand to hurt him. Now wiggle the bag one time to get his head up a little bit so he's not distracted by the food. That's it. Okay, let's walk towards his head. If you hit his bubble, start to move him, don't change the walk. Stop. Very good. Back down. Okay, walk 4 or 5.
Several things for you to notice as she is approaching the horse this time. Number one, she's still putting the bag up high and kind of waving it around behind her. That does have an effect on the horse. Number two, she starts to hit his bubble. The horse starts to inch back, looking to get out of town, and she doesn't notice it quite quick enough. So I get her to stop and back off, taking the pressure off the bubble, and the horse immediately stops moving away. That's what you need to do, is pay attention to what you're doing with the horse, watch for his bubble, and don't let him move his feet. If you approach too hard, too fast, you will move the horse, and that is not what you're trying to do. You're trying to approach him or get him to approach you. If you get the horse to stop and you can get him to look at you, that's good. If you can get him to stop and look at you and turn towards you, that's even better. If you can get him to stop, look at you, turn towards you, and walk towards you, that's better yet, and so on. Again, she approaches the horse, gets a few steps closer, but again she hits the bubble, and you see the horse starting to back away. She caught herself this time, didn't put too much pressure on, and it worked out better than before. In a situation like this, where the horse and the person have been working together in a bit of a difficult situation for a period of time, it's always a good idea to break up what's going on. In other words, let's just take a break. So at this point, I have her turn and just walk away from the horse. Notice when she walked away, she turned and put the bag right towards the horse. The correct thing to do would have been to keep the bag away from the horse. And then the horse actually looks at her again, which is a plus. Now at this point, the horse had a little bit of a break, she had a little bit of a break, so it might be a good time to send the horse off again. And of course you want to send him in the opposite direction that he is facing. The horse is standing there looking at her, which is in essence resistance. In other words, the horse is saying, no, I don't want to go. So she needs to use the bag a little sooner. Once she gets the horse going, she immediately reverts back to her previous behavior of running straight across the pen at the horse, which is cutting the horse off. Even when she reverses the horse the next time, she still starts to cut the horse off. You not only notice, after the horse resists her, and she does succeed in getting the horse to go the direction she wanted, then I ask her to get quiet and let the horse stop. The horse continues on in another couple of laps on his own while she's quiet, then actually stops over by the gate, thinks about it, looks at her, and then takes off again. Notice when he stopped and looked at her, the next step was he put his head down, because the head going down preceded the horse moving. You're going to see that over and over and over with horse after horse. This horse was a prime example of a horse who is very stoic, or what can also be called passive resistant. He doesn't want to kick your head off, he's not aggressive, but he is very much intent on not giving in. So for the next half hour or so, we proceeded to have her approach and retreat, send the horse off, and work on his bubble. In other words, she kept putting pressure on, pressure off, letting the horse know she's not going to go away, she's not going to give up. And he kept saying, I'm not giving in, I'm not giving in. In all these little segments you're seeing where she walks up, walks back, walks to the side, walks up, those are all applications of pressure on and pressure off. And on a stoic horse, that is one way to approach it. Had it been a different situation with a different person, I might have had the horse do a few more laps and reverse the horse, but in this particular situation, that was not what I chose to do. It is also a common problem when you get a horse who's a bit stuck, who's a bit stoic like this one is, and not giving in, and you're doing something over and over and you're thinking it's not working. It is working, but you have to really be aware so that when the horse gives you the slightest try, the slightest indication that he's willing to renegotiate this deal, you have to be ready to accept that. And our handler makes an error here when the horse actually starts to turn and take a step in, and she is so intent on not letting him move that she doesn't get him to do the one thing we've been trying to get him to do for a half hour. And she stops the horse when he starts to come in. When you compare this horse and his response to the same approach that we applied to the gray Arabian in the first demonstration that you saw in this video, you can see how different horses are. And you have to be prepared to evaluate each horse as the individual that they are. Because some horses are going to give you an immediate response, and some horses you're going to have to work with them, and your patience, persistence, and consistency will be a big asset. That is what this horse needs, is patience, persistence, and consistency, because you're really going to have to earn his respect. Notice that even this far into the procedure, the lady is still not aware that she's picking up the bag and waving it around behind her. You may also run into a horse who is putting his head down and ignoring you. In other words, he's sniffing or trying to find something else to do to not have to pay attention to you. If you suspect that the horse is putting his head down and using that as an excuse not to pay attention, then you could simply pop the bag or take a step towards the horse to get his head up and to say, pay attention to me, I am not to be ignored. Finally, after approaching and retreating and approaching, retreating, putting the pressure on and taking the pressure off the horse, you see the horse really looks stuck. His right front foot is glued in the cement. He's actually weaving back and forth a few times, and he's just not sure what to do. He decides he's just going to walk away from the situation and starts to go forward. She decides to control him and stop him by moving in front, which is what she was trying to do before when the horse was trying to turn in. In this case, it was a correct choice because she stops the horse and controls the situation. Once again, after horse and owner have been working together quite a while, both have been forced to stay focused on each other for quite a while, something that the owner is definitely not used to doing. and the horse is not used to being asked to give to the owner, I tell the person to just turn around, walk away, and take all the pressure off the horse. You immediately see the horse drop his head and take a couple of steps, almost as if he's saying, "Whew, boy, that was intense." This time you will notice that the handler has figured out the bag and is putting the bag away from the horse as she walks away, like she's supposed to. For those of you that would be critical of someone making a lot of mistakes in a round pen, believe me, when you're out there with a bunch of people watching, it's your horse and a lot of things are going on, you really have a lot to think about. It's not quite as easy as it looks. That's why we did 4 hours of video, to help you understand this. After a bit of a break in the action, so to speak, I have her approach the horse again, and now I have her start to circle around the side of the horse. In other words, putting the pressure on the horse from the side and moving around the horse to change how the horse is feeling the pressure of her approach, to see if we can't get this horse to turn, face her, and maybe walk in. Notice at one point when she approaches the horse straight from the side, he actually turns, faces her, and you can see him lean as if he really wants to come in, but he's just not comfortable doing it yet. That is a sign that we're making progress, even though to many of you this seems like a long, drawn-out process. And by the way, we could have done this process a bit faster, but when you're trying to work with someone who's never done this before, I have to proceed with slow steps so as not to confuse or overload the person. And when you're working with a horse the first few times, I ask you to really be patient and only proceed as fast as is comfortable for you and the horse. There's nothing wrong with taking 2 or 3 sessions to accomplish what maybe an expert could have done in one. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, the horse steps towards her and reaches over to touch her gently with his nose. His top line is straight, his head is low, he is respectful and submissive, and he is asking to join her herd. You reinforce that the horse did the right thing by doing nothing, and that's an important concept, contrary to human thought, but very valid to the horse. After a brief pause, she takes a step back. The horse's head comes with her immediately, and that's good. Take what the horse will give you and build on that. And if the horse isn't giving you everything, that's just fine. Now, after another 5-minute interval, which seems like an eternity if you were sitting there watching it, with a few more approach and retreats, the horse is still stuck, and I have her move lengthways down the side of the horse. She forgets to put the bag down and actually is waving the bag around behind her, which with other horses would have been a crisis. But then she stops, and the horse takes a step, turning towards her slightly. That's a big deal for this horse. Remember what I said, you take what the horse will give you, and if that's only a look and one little step, fantastic. You've got to reward that one little step and that look by not doing anything to the horse to make it a big deal for the horse. So he knows that's what you wanted. Because if you disillusion his one little step or his look, he may not try again. Now notice just after that little step, his head drops even more, and we see something from the horse we have not seen in a half hour. And that's his mouth working, and his mouth working a lot. If you don't see the mouth work, the horse is still stuck. Don't expect a lot of change. We finally are getting some mouth movement out of this horse. She tries moving away and behind the horse to change the direction the pressure is there from, and it doesn't get a response. The horse is almost relieved that she's gone away. So she goes back up to the horse, putting more pressure on, getting closer to the horse to try that as an approach. Remember, if you try something and it doesn't work, try something different. If you try something and it does work, maybe do it again. Once again, the horse reverts back to an old behavior and decides he's going to walk away. She's becoming far more aware of the horse, so the minute he takes that one little step forward, she gets around in front of him to stop him from leaving. In other words, she controls the horse, and that's what this is all about. I now have her walk right up to the horse's head, and notice his response. He puts his head down low, which is respectful, and leans over, looks at her, and offers a nice touch. Now, because he seems to be so stuck, we're going to use another technique that is very beneficial, and you'll see it throughout a couple of other sessions and other parts of this video. You're actually going to put your hand on the horse's nose and physically ask the horse to move. Remember, if the feet are stuck, the mind is stuck. And you can reverse that by moving the feet to get the mind unstuck. She's never done this before and she's a little unsure, so I'm having to explain to her where I want her to end up. She ends up with the horse facing forward, her left hand on his nose, and now she's going to turn the horse. Understand there are two levels of submission on the part of the horse. Number one, when you put your hand on his nose, he is giving you some submission simply by letting you do that. He could jerk his head away and you couldn't get your hand on. Then number two is you're going to use that hand on his nose to ask him to move either backwards or to one side. And that, if he does it, is a second level, a greater degree of submission than simply letting you put your hand there. I had her repeat this process a couple of times and then decided to ask her to turn and just walk away from the horse again. Notice she forgets about the bag and sticks the bag right back in front of the horse when she turns, which could have been a problem with a different horse. With the horse still showing a great deal of resistance in his attitude, very stoic, very passive, but resistant nonetheless, we go back to asking the horse to move, so she sends the horse off. And you will notice that the horse tries to reverse, the horse tries to slow down on her several times, and she's having to really keep after the horse to get him to go. This horse has a lot of resistance in his attitude, and believe me, even though a horse like this may be calm and stoic, if you really ask this horse to do something under saddle that he didn't want to do, you might find yourself in the middle of a crisis almost immediately. I'm coaching her through using the bag more effectively. In other words, put the bag out, and if the horse is going, just leave the bag out. But if the horse begins to slow down, then you need to shake the bag to make something happen. In other words, don't let the horse slow down and stop. Keep the horse moving. If the horse is going, the bag doesn't need to do anything. The bag comes into play when the horse either turns, trying to resist you, or tries to stop and slow down, which is also resistance. Notice she's getting a little bit better in her body position. She's not cutting the horse off as badly as before, but she's still getting in front of the horse a bit too often. When working with a horse with this much attitude and resistance, thousands of laps is a slow, miserable way to wear the horse down. Turning the horse, reversing the horse, is a better tool to get the horse to change his attitude. Now, in watching her work with this horse in this segment, you will notice the horse is very aware of her and very attentive to her, because when she says turn, he's actually turning pretty well. He's just not too enthused about it. Finally, with the horse stopped, he actually does turn into her. But he turns in a little more than he perhaps should have, because he runs into his bubble and again bounces off and starts to go off in the opposite direction. It's very subtle, but the handler overreacts and starts to charge off in front of the horse. She wanted to stop the horse, and that was correct. She could have done that with one or two simple quick steps sideways and perhaps kept the horse a little closer and a little more comfortable. Don't confuse a horse that is stubborn or resistant or stoic with a horse who is not sensitive or perceptive. And this horse is very sensitive and very perceptive. He just has his own agenda. Now at this point, as soon as she takes a couple of steps back towards the horse, you see his head drop, you see his head shake, and you see his mouth start to go. It may not be that apparent about the mouth on this particular scene from this camera angle, but you can see that his mouth starts going again. The head shake, the mouth movement, the head drop, those are all positive signs, especially the head shake, because that's tension being relieved in the horse. It's a very important step. Now she takes a couple of steps to her right, and the horse turns and looks at her immediately. We're getting his head to move, we're not getting his feet to move freely. That's our goal. Now I'm going to have her approach the horse and try to get his feet to move by actually walking through his head like you've seen in some of the previous horses. I tell her to put her hand up to not let the horse avoid her, and yet she doesn't understand, so she walks right past the horse, he lifts his head, and she goes right on by. She was focused on what she was doing, not on what the horse was doing in response. And by doing so, she simply allowed the horse to avoid her, and she did not control the situation. An alpha would control the situation. When the horse began to lift his head, turn his head away to avoid her, had she moved a little closer to his head and used her hand to simply not let the horse's head get around her, she would have compelled the horse to yield and move his feet, and that's what we were after. I get her to regroup, get back in position, try it again. This time you see one step. At that point you stop. When you get something from the horse that you were asking for, you have to stop, because that's how he knows he did the right thing. Finally, after what seems to be a long and difficult process for this horse, he does give in to her and chooses to follow her and walk around with her, as the other horses in the previous videos that you've seen. This was our goal, was to get this horse to free up its feet and to move with the person. With the horse following our person, she heads over to the rail to pick up the halter lead line to lead the horse with that. But, as you've seen in previous horses, don't immediately put the lead line on the horse. Just because you picked up the lead line doesn't mean you need to use it. And as you see here, she walks around again back to the middle of the pen with the horse following her, but without any connection, without any physical attachment to the horse. And it all looks very nice. One other quick point to make. It is very normal when people get a horse to follow them around this way, to want to do it and do it and do it over and over. Don't make that mistake. If the horse will follow you, take a few steps, stop. He should stop with you. And then stay there. Then pause, don't do anything. After you've waited for a brief time, at least a few seconds to a half a minute or so, now move again and have the horse follow you in a different direction perhaps. Don't move and move and move and move and try to get the horse to run around perpetually. Get the horse to move and stop. See how he stops. Also, you can see how long he will stop and stay with you still, as she is doing in the middle of the pen right now. Now I'd like you to notice, this is the picture of the lady bringing the horse in. Notice his ears and eyes are away from her. She's walking away, trying to get him to follow, and he has totally tuned her out. Now after the session, she's now going to walk around. Watch how the horse softly, with its head low, yields to get out of her way. How when she turns, the horse is going the way she is, almost at the same place in the pen, and now the horse is glued to her. Also, if you run this video back and forth, you will see the difference in the head position. Very important.